The bustling colony of HFY had long grown accustomed to the lonely isolation of their remote outpost at the edge of human-explored space. Established 3 decades ago as a mining operation, the colony had slowly transformed into a thriving hub of human activity, its towering domed habitats and sprawling industrial complexes a testament to humanity's endless drive to expand beyond the confines of Earth. Yet, for all their hard-won achievements, the colonists of HFY had never encountered another intelligent species, until that fateful day when their sensors detected the approach of an unidentified vessel. Panic gripped the Colonial Command Center as the massive alien craft materialized from the inky blackness of space. Its sleek, angular design was unlike anything the humans had ever seen, and its sheer size dwarfed even the largest vessels in the colonial fleet. Alarms blared, and frantic communications were exchanged as the terrified colonists braced for the worst. "Identify yourself and state your intentions," the colonial governor demanded, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to remain composed. Silence. The massive vessel hung motionless in the void, its imposing presence a stark contrast to the flurry of activity taking place on the colony below. After what felt like an eternity, a response finally crackled through the comm systems, its alien tones both chilling and captivating. "We are the Ravagers. You will surrender your colony to us, or be destroyed." The governor's eyes widened in horror. The Ravagers. A name whispered in fearful hushed tones across a dozen worlds. A species so merciless, so pitiless in their conquest of the galaxy, that the very mention of their name was enough to strike terror into the hearts of even the bravest explorers. We mean you no harm," the governor stammered, her mind racing to find the right words to avert the impending disaster. "We are a peaceful colony, seeking only to live and prosper in this corner of the galaxy. Please, we implore you, leave us be, and we shall cause you no trouble." Again, silence. The Ravager vessel remained motionless, seemingly indifferent to the governor's desperate plea. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a response came, but not the one the colonists had been dreading. "We have no interest in your colony or your species. You will be left unharmed." Stunned disbelief rippled through the command center. The Ravagers, the scourge of 1,000 worlds, had dismissed the human colony as unworthy of their attention. It was impossible, inconceivable. Surely this had to be some sort of ruse, a ploy to lull the humans into a false sense of security before unleashing their wrath. This cannot be," the governor exclaimed. "You are the Ravagers, the most feared conquerors in all the galaxy. How can you simply ignore us? Your species is of no consequence to us," the alien voice replied, its tone flat and devoid of any emotion. "You pose no threat, and your technologies hold no interest. We will depart, and you will be left in peace." With those final words, the massive Ravager vessel suddenly powered up its engines, and with a blinding flash of light, disappeared into the inky void, leaving the bewildered colonists staring in stunned silence at the empty space where it had once hovered. In the minutes that followed, a cacophony of voices erupted across the colony, each person struggling to make sense of what had just occurred. Some wept tears of joy, overjoyed at having been spared the wrath of the Ravagers. Others, however, were gripped by a sense of unease, their minds racing with unanswered questions. Why had the Ravagers shown such indifference towards the human colony? What was it about humanity that made them so insignificant in the eyes of these fearsome alien conquerors? And most importantly, could this unexpected reprieve truly be trusted, or was it merely the calm before the storm? The colonial governor, her composure now regained, raised a hand to silence the din. "Everyone, please, remain calm," she said, her voice steady and assured. "We have been granted a remarkable reprieve, but we must not let our guard down. The Ravagers have shown us a curious disinterest, but we must endeavor to understand the reasons behind it. For now, let us take solace in the fact that our colony has been spared, and redouble our efforts to secure our future in this uncertain galaxy." Her words, though tinged with a hint of trepidation, resonated with the colonists, and gradually the panicked cries gave way to a cautious sense of optimism. Perhaps, against all odds, humanity had found a way to coexist with the galaxy's most dreaded predators. Yet, as the Colonial Command Team convened to discuss the implications of this extraordinary encounter, they could not escape the nagging sense that the true nature of the Ravagers' indifference had yet to be revealed. For if there was one thing they had learned from the annals of human history, it was that the unknown was often the most dangerous adversary of all. In the weeks following the Ravagers' unexpected departure, a cautious sense of optimism began to take hold among the colonists of HFY. The initial panic had given way to a guarded curiosity, as the realization sank in that their remote outpost had somehow managed to avoid the wrath of the galaxy's most feared conquerors. Yet, beneath the surface, a growing unease persisted. The Colonial Command Team, led by the resolute Governor Amelia Sinclair, knew that their encounter with the Ravagers was far from over. The alien race's puzzling indifference towards the human colony was a mystery that demanded answers, lest it conceal a deeper and more insidious threat. "We cannot simply sit back and wait for the Ravagers to return," Sinclair declared during a tense strategy meeting. "Their disinterest in us may be genuine, but we cannot rule out the possibility that it is merely a ruse, a prelude to some greater scheme. We must take action, establish communications, and uncover the truth behind their motivations." The assembled command staff nodded in agreement, their expressions grim but resolute. This was uncharted territory, a diplomatic challenge unlike any they had faced before. The Ravagers were a species shrouded in mystery and fear, and the prospect of attempting to engage them directly was as daunting as it was necessary. "I will dispatch our most skilled diplomats to make contact with the Ravagers," Sinclair continued. "They will carry a message of peace and goodwill, and seek to establish a dialogue that might shed light on the reasons for their curious behavior." In the days that followed, a small fleet of diplomatic vessels set out from HFY, their crews filled with a mix of apprehension and determination. The journey was arduous, as they navigated the intricate web of Ravager-controlled space, constantly on the alert for any signs of hostility or danger. Finally, after weeks of painstaking travel, the diplomats reached the outer edges of the Ravagers' domain, their ships hailing the massive alien vessels that patrolled the region. To their surprise, the Ravagers responded, their alien voices emanating from the comm systems with a detached, almost bored tone. "We have no interest in your attempts at communication. Leave our space immediately, or be destroyed." The diplomats, taken aback by the Ravagers' blunt dismissal, nevertheless pressed on. "Esteemed Ravagers, we come in peace, bearing a message from the people of HFY. We wish only to understand the reasons for your curious disinterest in our colony, and to explore the possibility of establishing peaceful coexistence between our peoples." Again, silence. The Ravager vessels remained motionless, their ominous presence a stark contrast to the fragile human ships that hovered before them. After what felt like an eternity, the response came, the alien voice tinged with a hint of exasperation. "Your colony is of no consequence to us. Your species holds no strategic value, and your technologies are primitive. We have no desire to engage with you further. Depart, or be destroyed." The diplomats, their hearts sinking, reluctantly acknowledged the futility of their efforts. Defeated, they turned their ships around and began the long journey back to HFY, their minds reeling from the Ravagers' unwavering indifference. When the diplomats finally returned to the colony, their report only served to deepen the sense of unease that had gripped the colonists. The Ravagers' dismissive attitude, their absolute refusal to even entertain the possibility of communication or cooperation, was deeply unsettling. What did it mean that the most feared conquerors in the galaxy had deemed humanity so insignificant as to be unworthy of their attention? Governor Sinclair, her brow furrowed in contemplation, addressed the gathered command staff. "It is clear that the Ravagers view us as nothing more than a curiosity, a species so inconsequential that they cannot be bothered to even acknowledge our existence. And yet, I cannot shake the feeling that there is more to this than meets the eye. Their indifference, their refusal to engage with us, suggests that there may be some underlying reason for their behavior, a motivation that we have yet to uncover. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her officers, each one reflecting the same mixture of confusion and concern. "We must continue our efforts to understand the Ravagers," Sinclair continued, her voice resolute. "For if we can unravel the mystery of their disinterest in us, we may just find the key to coexisting peacefully with the most formidable force in the galaxy. The future of our colony, and perhaps even the fate of humanity, may depend on it." With those words, the meeting was adjourned, and the command staff dispersed, each one grappling with the implications of their encounter with the Ravagers. The path forward was uncertain, fraught with peril and unanswered questions, but one thing was clear. The colony of HFY was now firmly entangled in a galactic mystery that would test the limits of their diplomacy, their ingenuity, and their very survival. The failure of the diplomatic overtures only served to deepen the mystery surrounding the Ravagers' curious disinterest in the human colony of HFY. With the alien conquerors resolutely refusing to engage, Governor Sinclair knew that more drastic measures would be required to uncover the truth. "We cannot allow the Ravagers' indifference to remain unchallenged," she declared during a tense strategy meeting. "Their dismissal of our efforts to communicate must be met with a more proactive approach. We must send in our best and brightest to observe the Ravagers firsthand, to infiltrate their domain, and gather the intelligence we need to understand their motivations." The room erupted in a flurry of murmurs and objections. The proposal was a risky one, bordering on suicidal. The Ravagers were infamous for their merciless treatment of any who dared to encroach upon their territory, and the thought of sending a team of human operatives into their domain was enough to send chills down the spines of even the most seasoned veterans. "Governor, with all due respect, this is madness," one of the officers protested. "The Ravagers have made their stance clear. They have no interest in us, and they will not tolerate any interference. Sending in a covert team is tantamount to a declaration of war, and I fear the consequences would be catastrophic." Sinclair raised a hand, silencing the dissent. "I understand your concerns, but we cannot afford to simply sit back and wait for the Ravagers to change their minds. If there is any chance that we can uncover the reasons behind their disinterest, we must take it. The future of our colony, and perhaps even the fate of humanity, may hang in the balance." Reluctantly, the officers conceded the governor's point. The need for answers was too great to ignore, and if there was even the slightest possibility of avoiding a confrontation with the Ravagers, they knew they had to seize it. And so the wheels were set in motion. A team of the colony's most skilled and daring operatives was assembled, their mission to infiltrate the Ravagers' territory and observe the alien conquerors from the shadows. Equipped with the latest in cloaking and stealth technology, the team set out, their journey fraught with danger and uncertainty. As they navigated the treacherous path through Ravager-controlled space, the operatives found themselves in awe of the sheer scale and might of the alien civilization. The sprawling cities, the towering vessels, the unfathomable technology. All of it served as a stark reminder of the gulf that separated humanity from their galactic neighbors. Yet, despite the overwhelming power of the Ravagers, the human team remained focused on their mission, their every movement cloaked in shadows and silence. They observed the alien conquerors going about their daily routines, marveling at the efficiency and discipline that seemed to permeate every aspect of Ravager society. And then the breakthrough came. During a routine patrol, the operatives stumbled upon a previously undiscovered Ravager research facility, its purpose initially shrouded in mystery. Carefully, they infiltrated the facility, their sensors probing the strange energy signatures that emanated from its depths. What they discovered would forever change the way they viewed the Ravagers. Deep within the facility, the operatives found a vast repository of data, information on the countless worlds the Ravagers had conquered, the civilizations they had encountered, and the technologies they had assimilated. But amidst this trove of knowledge, one thing stood out: a complete lack of any reference to humanity or the human colonies that dotted the galaxy. It was as if the Ravagers had simply forgotten about them. Puzzled, the operatives delved deeper, uncovering evidence that suggested the Ravagers' disinterest in humanity was not a calculated decision, but rather a byproduct of their own evolutionary and cultural development. The alien conquerors, it seemed, were so advanced, so focused on their own grand ambitions, that the mere existence of humanity had slipped beneath their notice, a curious, insignificant species deemed unworthy of their attention. With this realization, the operatives knew they had stumbled upon a truth that would shake the foundations of the human colony. Quickly, they compiled their findings and set out on the perilous journey back to HFY, their hearts racing with the weight of their discovery. When they finally returned and delivered their report to Governor Sinclair, the colonial leader listened with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The implications of the Ravagers' indifference were both profound and unsettling, a testament to the vast gulf that separated humanity from the galaxy's most fearsome conquerors. So, in the end, we are nothing more than a curiosity to them, Sinclair murmured, her brow furrowed in contemplation. A species so insignificant that we've slipped from their notice entirely. How humbling. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the assembled officers, each one grappling with the implications of this revelation. But perhaps, in this strange twist of fate, we have found an opportunity, she continued, her voice tinged with a newfound sense of determination. If the Ravagers truly have no interest in us, then perhaps we can use that to our advantage, to carve out a place for humanity in this vast and unforgiving galaxy. The path forward may not be an easy one, but we must seize this chance, lest we be forever relegated to the margins of the cosmos. With those words, the meeting was adjourned, and the colonial command team set to work, their minds racing with the possibilities that had been presented to them. The future of HFY, and perhaps all of humanity, now hung in the balance, a precarious balance that would be tested in the days and weeks to come. The covert infiltration of the Ravager research facility had yielded a trove of invaluable intelligence, and the human operatives returned to the colony of HFY with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Their findings had shattered the prevailing assumptions about the galaxy's most feared conquerors, and the implications were nothing short of staggering. As Governor Sinclair and her assembled command staff pored over the data, the magnitude of the Ravagers' capabilities became increasingly clear. The alien civilization possessed technological marvels that went far beyond anything humanity had ever achieved. Advanced propulsion systems, energy generation that defied all known laws of physics, and weapons that could lay waste to entire planets with a single volley. Yet, despite this overwhelming might, the Ravagers had shown a curious disinterest in the human colony, dismissing its existence as nothing more than an insignificant curiosity. "This is inconceivable," Sinclair murmured, her eyes scanning the schematics and sensor readings that the operatives had collected. "The Ravagers possess capabilities that we can scarcely even comprehend, and yet they have chosen to ignore us entirely. Why?" The assembled officers exchanged uneasy glances, each one grappling with the implications of this revelation. If the Ravagers were truly so advanced, so far beyond the technological and military capabilities of humanity, then what did that mean for the future of the colonial outpost, and for the human race as a whole? "Perhaps they see us as too primitive to warrant their attention," one of the officers suggested, his voice tinged with a hint of trepidation. "Our technology, our social structures, they may simply be too rudimentary to be of any interest to the Ravagers." Sinclair nodded, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "That is certainly a possibility. But even so, the scale of their indifference is unsettling. They have not merely dismissed us, but have seemingly forgotten we even exist. There must be more to it than that." Another officer cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the room. Governor, there's something else we discovered in the research facility that may shed light on the Ravagers' motivations. It appears that they have cataloged and assimilated the technologies of countless alien civilizations they've encountered over the course of their history, but humanity is not among them. Sinclair's eyes widened with the implication. You mean to say that the Ravagers have no record of human technology or culture in their archives? Precisely, the officer replied. It's as if we have simply slipped beneath their notice, a species that has never even registered on their radar. They have no interest in us because, as far as they're concerned, we don't exist. The room fell silent, the weight of this revelation hanging heavy in the air. For the human colonists, the idea that they could be so utterly dismissed by the galaxy's most formidable power was almost too much to bear. It was a blow to their pride, a stark reminder of the vast gulf that separated humanity from the heights of galactic civilization. This changes everything, Sinclair murmured, her gaze fixed on the data before her. If the Ravagers truly have no knowledge of us, no understanding of our capabilities or our potential, then we may have an opportunity to carve out a place for ourselves in this galaxy without the threat of their conquest looming over us. She paused, her lips curling into a faint smile. And perhaps in time, we may even be able to leverage this curious situation to our advantage. If the Ravagers are as indifferent to us as the data suggests, then we may be able to study them, learn from them, and even forge an uneasy alliance, one that could open up new avenues for human expansion and exploration. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of cautious optimism and skepticism. The path forward was far from clear, and the risks of provoking the Ravagers were still very much present. Governor, I must caution against any rash actions, one of the officers interjected. The Ravagers may have overlooked us thus far, but that could change at any moment. We must tread carefully, lest we inadvertently draw their attention and invite their wrath. Sinclair nodded, her expression grave. You make a fair point, Colonel. We must proceed with the utmost caution and prudence, but the opportunity before us is too great to ignore. If we can somehow leverage the Ravagers' disinterest to our advantage, we may just be able to secure a future for humanity that is free from the constant threat of their conquest. With a resolute nod, the governor turned to address the assembled staff. Gentlemen, we have our work cut out for us, but I believe that if we approach this challenge with intelligence, creativity, and a healthy dose of caution, we may just be able to unravel the mystery of the Ravagers' curious disinterest in humanity, and perhaps, in the process, forge a path to a new era of galactic exploration and cooperation. The officers nodded in agreement, their expressions reflecting a newfound sense of purpose and determination. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the potential rewards were too great to ignore. As they dispersed to their respective duties, the colonists of HFY found themselves filled with a cautious optimism, their gaze fixed firmly on the stars that stretched out before them. The revelations uncovered by the covert infiltration team sent shockwaves through the colony of HFY. The startling discovery that the Ravagers, the most fearsome conquerors in the known galaxy, possessed no record or knowledge of humanity had left the colonial leadership reeling, their minds racing with a myriad of questions and theories. As Governor Sinclair convened her command staff for a crucial strategy meeting, the air was thick with a palpable sense of unease and anticipation. All eyes were fixed on the governor, waiting with bated breath for her to share her own insights on this remarkable turn of events. Gentlemen, Sinclair began, her voice calm and measured. The information our operatives have gathered is nothing short of astounding. The Ravagers, in all their might and technological supremacy, have somehow managed to completely overlook the existence of the human race. This is a revelation that challenges everything we thought we knew about our place in the galaxy. She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. Now the question we must grapple with is this. Why? Why have the Ravagers, who have conquered and assimilated countless alien civilizations, chosen to ignore us entirely? The officers exchanged a series of uneasy glances, each one pondering the implications of this puzzle. Finally, one of the more experienced commanders spoke up. "Governor, it's possible that the Ravagers simply view us as too insignificant to warrant their attention. Perhaps our technology, our social structures, even our very existence, are so primitive in their eyes that we have simply slipped beneath their notice." Sinclair nodded thoughtfully. "That is certainly a plausible explanation. The Ravagers' capabilities are so far beyond our own that they may see us as nothing more than a curious anomaly, unworthy of their time and resources." Another officer, a young and ambitious scientist, raised his hand. "Or perhaps, Governor, the Ravagers have a strict policy of non-interference when it comes to underdeveloped species. They may have made a conscious decision to leave us alone, to allow us to evolve and progress on our own terms, without the threat of their conquest looming over us." The room fell silent as the gathered leaders considered this possibility. The notion that the Ravagers could be acting with such restraint and foresight was a startling one, challenging the prevailing perception of them as ruthless, uncompromising conquerors. "An intriguing theory, Dr. Emerson," Sinclair mused. "If the Ravagers do indeed have a policy of non-interference, then it may present us with an unprecedented opportunity. Perhaps we can use their disinterest to our advantage, to carve out a place for humanity in this vast and unforgiving galaxy." Yet, as the discussion continued, more speculative and far-fetched theories began to emerge. One officer, his brow furrowed in deep contemplation, spoke up with a curious hypothesis. What if the Ravagers are simply unaware of our existence because they lack the capacity to perceive us? Perhaps there is something unique about the human species, something that renders us invisible or undetectable to their advanced senses and technologies. The room erupted in a flurry of murmurs and skeptical glances, but the officer pressed on, undeterred. "Think about it. The Ravagers have assimilated countless alien civilizations, each with their own unique attributes and characteristics. What if humanity possesses some innate quality, some evolutionary adaptation, that makes us fundamentally incompatible with their perceptual abilities? It could be the reason they've overlooked us entirely." Sinclair raised a hand, silencing the din. "While an intriguing idea, Lieutenant, I'm not sure we can afford to place too much stock in such speculative theories. We need to focus on the facts, the evidence we've gathered, and use that to inform our next steps." The lieutenant nodded, a hint of disappointment in his expression. "Of course, Governor. You're right. We can't afford to chase after fanciful notions when the stakes are so high." As the meeting drew to a close, Sinclair addressed the assembled officers with a renewed sense of determination. "Gentlemen, we have much work ahead of us. Our encounter with the Ravagers has presented us with a unique opportunity, but also a daunting challenge. We must use every resource at our disposal to unravel the mystery of their disinterest in humanity, and to find a way to leverage that to our advantage." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. "The fate of our colony, and perhaps the future of our species, may very well depend on our ability to navigate this uncharted territory. So let us approach this task with the utmost care, creativity, and vigilance. We cannot afford to make any missteps, lest we invite the wrath of the Ravagers down upon us." With a resolute nod, the officers dispersed, each one grappling with the implications of this extraordinary situation. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, but the potential rewards were too great to ignore. As the colony of Altair VII braced itself for the challenges that lay ahead, the future of humanity hung in the balance. As the colonial command team of Altair VII continued to grapple with the profound implications of the Ravagers' disinterest in humanity, a growing sense of frustration and impatience began to take hold among certain factions within the colony. Chief among them was a group of ambitious young scientists and military officers who were unwilling to simply accept the status quo and wait for answers to reveal themselves. Emboldened by the conviction that the Ravagers' indifference presented an unprecedented opportunity for human expansion and advancement, they began to agitate for a more proactive, even reckless, approach. We cannot afford to simply sit back and hope the Ravagers maintain their curious disregard for our existence, argued Lieutenant Commander Alara Khan, a brilliant young physicist whose brilliant mind was matched only by her boundless ambition. This is a chance to leapfrog humanity into the upper echelons of galactic civilization, and we must seize it before it slips through our fingers. Governor Sinclair listened to Khan's impassioned pleas with a mixture of empathy and trepidation. She understood the allure of the lieutenant commander's vision. The prospect of elevating humanity beyond the confines of their humble origins was a tantalizing one. But she also recognized the grave risks inherent in any attempt to provoke or manipulate the Ravagers, whose power and ruthlessness were the stuff of nightmares. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, Alara," Sinclair replied, her tone measured and cautious. "But we must tread carefully here. The Ravagers have shown us a remarkable disinterest, but we cannot assume that will last forever. Any reckless action on our part could very well invite their wrath down upon us, and the consequences of that would be devastating." Khan's brow furrowed in frustration, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "Governor, with all due respect, we cannot afford to be paralyzed by fear. The Ravagers have overlooked us thus far, and that gives us a unique opportunity to progress as a species, to leapfrog beyond the technological limitations that have constrained us for centuries. All we need is the courage to seize it." The other officers in the room exchanged uneasy glances, clearly torn between the allure of Khan's vision and the caution espoused by the governor. The tension in the air was palpable, a silent battle of wills that threatened to tear the colonial leadership apart. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sinclair raised a hand, silencing the discussion. "Very well, Lieutenant Commander. I can see that your passion for this course of action is not to be deterred. But I must insist that any experiments or initiatives you pursue be conducted with the utmost care and caution. We cannot afford to provoke the Ravagers, no matter how tempting the potential rewards may be." Khan's eyes widened, and a triumphant smile spread across her face. "Understood, Governor. I can assure you that my team and I will proceed with the greatest of prudence. We will tread carefully, and we will not take any unnecessary risks." Sinclair nodded, her expression still etched with a hint of trepidation. "See that you don't, Alara. The fate of this colony, and perhaps even the future of humanity, hangs in the balance." With that, the meeting was adjourned, and the ambitious young scientists and officers set to work, their minds racing with the possibilities that had been placed before them. They would proceed cautiously, of course. Sinclair's warning had been clear, and none of them were foolish enough to defy the governor's orders outright. But they were also driven by a burning desire to seize this unique opportunity, to push the boundaries of human achievement, and cement their place among the stars. And so, in the weeks and months that followed, a series of highly sensitive and risky experiments were undertaken, each one designed to test the limits of the Ravagers' disinterest in humanity. The scientists pushed the boundaries of their technological capabilities, simulating advanced breakthroughs in fields like energy generation, propulsion, and weapons development. They hoped that by demonstrating humanity's potential, they might somehow pique the Ravagers' curiosity and draw them back into the fold. But as the experiments continued, the results were decidedly mixed. While the human scientists made impressive strides in advancing their technologies, the Ravagers remained stubbornly indifferent, their vast vessels drifting past the colony without so much as a glance. And with each passing day, the tension within the colonial leadership grew, as Sinclair's warnings of the dangers of provoking the Ravagers seemed to be borne out, until, one fateful day, the delicate balance was shattered. In a desperate bid to provoke a reaction from the Ravagers, the scientists had attempted to replicate a powerful energy signature that had been detected in the alien Conquerors' research facilities. But something had gone horribly wrong, and the resulting explosion had rocked the colony, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. As the dust settled, the colonial command team gathered, their faces etched with a mixture of horror and resignation. They had gambled, and they had lost. And now, the consequences of their actions threatened to bring the wrath of the Ravagers down upon them all. The aftermath of the disastrous experiment that had rocked the colony of HFY was a tense and somber affair. Governor Sinclair and her command staff convened urgently, their faces etched with a mixture of horror and resignation as they grappled with the implications of their actions. "This is a catastrophe," Sinclair declared, her voice trembling with a rare display of emotion. "We have defied my express orders and provoked the Ravagers, and now we may have sealed the fate of our entire colony." The other officers sat in stoic silence, their gazes fixed on the floor. They knew the governor was right. Their reckless experiments, driven by ambition and a thirst for advancement, had put everything they had worked to build at risk. "Governor, I take full responsibility for this," Lieutenant Commander Khan spoke up, her voice laced with guilt and shame. "I was so blinded by the potential of this opportunity that I failed to heed your warnings. I've put us all in grave danger, and for that, I am truly sorry." Sinclair raised a hand, silencing the young officer. "We are all culpable here, Alara. I should have been more vigilant, more forceful in my opposition to these experiments. We have all contributed to this perilous situation, and now we must find a way to salvage what we can." The room fell silent once more, the weight of their collective mistake hanging heavy in the air. As the minutes ticked by, the sound of distant alarms and the muffled cries of the panicked colonists served as a constant reminder of the chaos that had been unleashed. Finally, one of the senior officers, a seasoned veteran named Commander Ramirez, cleared his throat and spoke up. "Governor, I know this is a difficult time, but we must act quickly. The Ravagers will have surely detected the energy signature from our experiment, and they will be on their way. We need to prepare our defenses, evacuate the civilians, and hope that we can somehow appease them before they unleash their wrath upon us." Sinclair nodded, her expression grim. "You're right, Commander. We have no choice but to brace for the worst. Dispatch teams to fortify our defenses and coordinate the evacuation. We must buy ourselves as much time as possible." As the officers sprang into action, a somber quiet settled over the command center. Sinclair remained, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where she knew the Ravagers would soon appear. And then, to her surprise, the sensors detected something unexpected. The Ravager vessels were not approaching with the overwhelming force she had anticipated. Instead, they were moving with a deliberate, almost cautious pace. Furrowing her brow, Sinclair turned to one of the communications officers. "Hail the Ravager ships. Let's see if we can open a dialogue before they commence their attack." The officer nodded, his fingers flying across the console. After a tense moment, a familiar alien voice crackled through the speakers. "Humans of HFY, you have provoked us. Explain yourselves, or face the consequences." Sinclair took a deep breath, her mind racing to find the right words. "Esteemed Ravagers, we have acted in haste and foolishness. Our experiments were driven by a desire to understand your curious disinterest in our species and to seek out opportunities for cooperation and coexistence. But in doing so, we have endangered our colony and disrespected your sovereignty. We humbly ask for your forgiveness and the chance to make amends." Silence. The Ravager vessels continued their measured approach, their imposing presence a stark contrast to the fragile human colony below. And then, to Sinclair's astonishment, the alien voice responded. "Your actions, while reckless, are not entirely unexpected. You are a young species, driven by ambition and a thirst for knowledge. We have observed this pattern many times before, in the countless civilizations we have encountered over the eons." The governor blinked, her mind racing to process the Ravager's words. You have observed us?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Indeed," the Ravager replied, the hint of a sigh in their tone. "We have been aware of your existence for some time, but have chosen to maintain our distance. Your species holds no strategic value to us, and your technologies are still too primitive to warrant our attention." Sinclair felt a lump form in her throat as the weight of the Ravager's revelation sank in. Then Then why have you not simply conquered us, as you have done with so many others? Because, the alien voice replied, your species is of no consequence to us. You pose no threat, and your conquest would serve no purpose. We have simply forgotten about you, until your recent actions forced us to reckon with your existence once more. The governor stared at the communications console, her mind reeling. The Ravagers, the galaxy's most feared conquerors, had not overlooked humanity out of ignorance or indifference, but rather because they had deemed the human race to be so insignificant as to not even warrant their attention. I don't know what to say, Sinclair murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. There is nothing to say, the Ravager replied. We will leave your colony be, on the condition that you refrain from any further attempts to provoke or engage with us. Your species is of no interest to us, and we have no desire to expend the resources necessary to subjugate you. With those final words, the communication channel went silent, and the Ravager vessels began to slowly turn and depart, leaving the stunned colonists of Altair VII to grapple with the profound implications of what they had just witnessed. In the days that followed the Ravagers' unexpected departure from the colony of Altair VII, a profound sense of disbelief and humility settled over the colonists. The realization that the galaxy's most feared conquerors had deemed humanity so insignificant as to not even warrant their attention was a bitter pill to swallow, shattering the prevailing assumptions about the human race's place in the cosmos. Governor Sinclair, her expression a mix of relief and contemplation, convened her command staff to discuss the implications of this extraordinary encounter. Gentlemen, I believe it is fair to say that our understanding of the Ravagers and our position in this galaxy has been irrevocably altered, she began, her voice tinged with a hint of weariness. What we have learned here is both humbling and, in some ways, profoundly unsettling. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their minds still grappling with the weight of the Ravagers' revelation. For years, they had lived in the shadow of the alien conquerors, their every action and decision shaped by the looming threat of the Ravagers' wrath. And now, to discover that they had been utterly dismissed, their very existence deemed inconsequential, was a jarring and unsettling realization. Governor, I must admit that I'm still struggling to come to terms with this. One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Emerson, spoke up. To think that the Ravagers, the scourge of 1,000 worlds, have simply forgotten about us. It's almost impossible to comprehend. Sinclair nodded emphatically. I understand your sentiment, Lieutenant. It is a difficult truth to accept, and one that challenges everything we thought we knew about our place in this galaxy. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. But I would argue that, in this revelation, we have also been granted a remarkable opportunity. The Ravagers have shown us a curious disinterest, and that may be the key to securing a future for humanity that is free from the constant threat of their conquest. The officers stirred, their expressions shifting from one of uncertainty to cautious optimism. Governor, are you suggesting that we can coexist with the Ravagers? Commander Ramirez asked, his brow furrowed in contemplation. That we can find a way to carve out a place for ourselves in this galaxy, without the fear of their wrath hanging over us. Sinclair's lips curled into a faint smile. Precisely, Commander. The Ravagers have made it clear that they have no interest in subjugating or even acknowledging our species, and while that may be a blow to our pride, it also presents us with a unique chance to explore the stars and expand our reach without the constant threat of their invasion looming over us. She paused, her expression growing more serious. Of course, we must proceed with the utmost caution. The Ravagers have made it abundantly clear that they will not tolerate any further attempts to provoke or engage with them. We must tread carefully and focus our efforts on strengthening our own capabilities and expanding our knowledge, rather than on challenging the Ravagers' supremacy. The officers nodded in agreement, the weight of Sinclair's words sinking in. For years, their every decision had been shaped by the looming presence of the Ravagers, their actions dictated by the need to appease or avoid the alien conquerors. But now, with this newfound understanding, They found themselves presented with a horizon of possibilities that had once seemed utterly unattainable. Governor, if we are to truly capitalize on this opportunity, we will need to rethink our entire approach to exploration and expansion. Ramirez mused, his expression thoughtful. We can no longer afford to be constrained by the fear of the Ravagers. We must be bold, innovative, and above all, vigilant in our efforts to secure a future for humanity. Sinclair nodded, her gaze filled with a renewed sense of determination. Precisely, Commander, and that is precisely what we shall do. We will redouble our efforts to advance our technologies, to explore the unknown reaches of this galaxy, and to forge alliances with other civilizations that share our desire for peace and cooperation. She paused, her lips curling into a faint smile. And who knows, perhaps in time, we may even find a way to leverage our newfound understanding of the Ravagers to our advantage, to open up new avenues of exploration and discovery that were once closed to us. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting a newfound sense of purpose and optimism. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and unknown dangers. But for the first time in living memory, the colonists of HFY found themselves unburdened by the constant threat of the Ravagers' conquest, a freedom that promised to open up a world of possibilities. As the meeting drew to a close, Sinclair addressed her command staff with a sense of quiet resolve. Gentlemen, the future of humanity may very well hang in the balance, but I believe that with our ingenuity, our determination, and our newfound respect for our place in this galaxy, we can carve out a path that will secure our rightful place among the stars. Let us begin this journey with clear eyes and steady hands, and may the stars guide us to a future that is both prosperous and enduring. The officers rose, their expressions filled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The road ahead would not be an easy one, but the promise of a tomorrow free from the Ravagers' shadow was a beacon that they were more than willing to follow.